In 1991, Steven Spielberg was already one of the most powerful directors in Hollywood. He had turned a malfunctioning mechanical shark into Jaws, redefined childhood wonder with E.T., and revitalized adventure with Indiana Jones. But behind his long list of triumphs lies one film he has quietly distanced himself from for decades. It was supposed to be another family classic, yet the experience became so painful that Spielberg himself confessed he could never watch it again. At the center of that heartbreak was Julia Roberts, The Burden of Expectations. By the early 1990s, Spielberg stood at the peak of his career. After Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in 1989, he took a short hiatus, carefully considering what story to tell next. When the idea emerged to revisit J.M. Barrie's timeless tale of Peter Pan, but with a twist, what if Peter had grown up and forgotten Neverland? It sounded like a project made for Spielberg's sensibilities. He had always identified with the figure of Peter Pan, admitting in interviews that he himself suffered from what he called Peter Pan syndrome, the feeling of never quite wanting to grow up. This project promised to explore that theme while tapping into the magic and spectacle audiences expected from him. The studio gave Spielberg a massive budget, close to $48 million, which eventually ballooned to over $80 million as production dragged on. The casting was designed to guarantee success. Robin Williams, beloved for his roles in Good Morning Vietnam and Dead Poets Society, was chosen as Peter Banning, the adult Peter Pan turned workaholic lawyer. Dustin Hoffman, one of the most respected actors of his generation, signed on as Captain Hook, while veteran actress Maggie Smith played Granny Wendy. Even cameos from Phil Collins, David Crosby, Carrie Fisher, and George Lucas added to the prestige. At the center of it all, Julia Roberts, fresh from the meteoric success of Pretty Woman, was cast as Tinker Bell. On paper, it was a perfect storm of talent. Roberts was only 23, but already considered Hollywood's golden girl. Her smile was on magazine covers worldwide, and her name alone could sell tickets. Spielberg was no stranger to working with stars, but this time, something felt different. The production began in February 1991, with a schedule meant to finish in less than 3 months. Yet almost immediately, delays piled up, and tensions started to build. What Spielberg thought would be a magical return to childhood fantasy was about to become one of the most stressful productions of his career. Julia Roberts in crisis. When Julia Roberts arrived on the set of Hook in early 1991, she was not just another young actress. She was the most talked-about star in Hollywood. Only a year earlier, Pretty Woman had exploded at the box office, earning her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress and catapulting her to global fame. To the public, she seemed unstoppable, confident, radiant, and destined for decades of superstardom. But beneath that glamorous surface, her private life was unraveling in ways that would soon bleed into her work. At the time, Roberts was engaged to actor Kiefer Sutherland, who had charmed audiences in The Lost Boys and who shared the screen with her in Flatliners in 1990. Their whirlwind romance was a constant subject for the tabloids, and their planned wedding was scheduled for June 14, 1991, conveniently timed near the end of Spielberg's production schedule. Yet just as filming intensified, Roberts discovered that Sutherland had allegedly been unfaithful, reportedly involved with an exotic dancer. In a twist that made headlines worldwide, Roberts herself was accused of growing close to Jason Patric, Sutherland's best friend and Lost Boys co-star. The drama exploded in the press. On the very day she was supposed to walk down the aisle, Sutherland was photographed moving out of their shared home, while Roberts was seen in Ireland with Patrick. The story dominated entertainment news, with every tabloid in America running updates on the scandal. For Spielberg, this media storm was a nightmare, drawing unwanted attention to a film already struggling with delays and inflated costs. For Roberts, the timing was catastrophic. She was only 23, reeling from the collapse of her relationship while trying to anchor a demanding role in a massive studio production. The pressure showed. Crew members whispered about her isolation on set, about the long hours she spent locked in her trailer. Because Tinker Bell was largely a digital and practical effects character, Roberts often filmed her scenes alone against a green screen, suspended on wires, with no castmates to interact with. She had only Spielberg to guide her through those moments, and insiders recalled how difficult it became for both actress and director. Before long, a cruel nickname began circulating: Tinkerhell. Whether fair or not, it captured the tense atmosphere surrounding Roberts, and it stuck with her for years. Spielberg reaches his breaking point. For Steven Spielberg, Hook was supposed to be a joyous project, a chance to revisit the childhood wonder that had defined his earlier hits. But as filming dragged on, he began to feel like the magic was slipping through his fingers. What was intended as a 76-day shoot stretched to 116 days. The budget ballooned past $80 million, a staggering figure for the early 1990s. Each morning, Spielberg walked onto elaborate, brightly colored sets that grew more extravagant as his confidence dwindled. Years later, he admitted he tried to mask his insecurity with spectacle, building bigger and more colorful sets because he didn't trust the story at its core. Complicating matters further was Dustin Hoffman. A famously meticulous performer, Hoffman insisted on countless retakes and adjustments, a perfectionism that often slowed the pace of filming. With child actors also in the cast, strict labor laws limited shooting hours, making scheduling a constant battle. Spielberg, normally known for his efficient style, found himself stuck in endless delays, juggling fragile egos and production challenges. In the middle of it all was Julia Roberts. Her personal turmoil made her presence unpredictable, and her isolation on green screen stages only deepened the tension. Reports surfaced that she locked herself in her trailer for hours, resisting costume fittings or delaying shoots. Crew members whispered about her behavior, and the nickname Tinkerhell circulated behind closed doors. Spielberg, who prided himself on fostering warm, collaborative environments, now found himself walking on eggshells. Every decision felt precarious, every day a gamble. Years later, when asked about the experience, Spielberg didn't sugarcoat it. On 60 Minutes, he acknowledged Roberts' immense talent, but admitted that the timing of the production was disastrous. "It was an unfortunate time for us to work together," he said, adding firmly that he had no interest in ever collaborating with her again. It was a rare public rebuke from a director known for loyalty to his actors. For Roberts, hearing those words was crushing. She had believed Spielberg was her defender during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Instead, she felt abandoned, and the wound never fully healed. Julia Roberts fights back. As the dust of Hook settled, Julia Roberts found herself in an unenviable position. The movie had grossed more than $300 million worldwide, but critics were divided, and the whispers about her on-set behavior threatened to overshadow her rising career. The tabloids painted her as difficult, temperamental, and unstable. For Roberts, who was still in her early 20s, the coverage was suffocating. She had just endured a public breakup, only to have her professional reputation dragged into the mud. The rumors grew uglier with time. Some reports suggested Roberts had been so volatile that she nearly lost her role as Tinker Bell. Others claimed she was battling a secret drug problem. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Roberts angrily denied the allegations. "There were never any drugs. Never. That's why it's so absurd and frustrating. Why should I have to explain something that's never been an issue in my life? But I'm forced to because every paper in the country is writing that I'm a drug addict." The frustration was clear in her words. She was not only defending her career, but her personal integrity. Even minor incidents became fodder for gossip. One anonymous crew member alleged that she had thrown shoes at someone on set. Roberts' reply was blunt. If they don't have balls enough to say who they are, I think they should shut the fuck up. Her anger reflected how cornered she felt, bombarded with accusations she insisted were false. As for the infamous nickname Tinkerhell, Roberts maintained she had never heard it. What she admitted was her irritation with the long hours and endless delays of Hook. "I'm a normal person," she explained. "If I sit in my trailer for 6 hours doing nothing, I'm going to say, 'What the fuck is going on?' I don't think that's an outrageous question. I don't think that's temperamental either." To her, any actor put in her shoes would have felt the same way. But what hurt most was Spielberg's response. She believed they had shared moments of genuine fun on set. She even recalled whipped cream fights and Spielberg telling her he looked forward to working with her every day. Hearing him later say he wouldn't collaborate with her again felt like betrayal. In her eyes, Spielberg had bowed to public pressure instead of defending her. She would later call it a hard lesson to learn, one that left her with lasting scars. The weight of regret. When Hook finally premiered in December 1991, the film was greeted with anticipation and curiosity. Audiences flocked to theaters, and the box office returns, over $300 million worldwide, were far from a failure. Yet critical reception was tepid. Reviewers complained that the story lacked focus, that the spectacle overwhelmed the heart. For Spielberg, the response confirmed what he already feared. His instincts had been off. In later interviews, he admitted he had little confidence in the script beyond the opening act and the ending. "I felt like a fish out of water making Hook," he confessed years later to Empire magazine. "I didn't quite know what I was doing, and I tried to paint over my insecurity with production value. The more insecure I felt about it, the bigger and more colorful the sets became." While audiences eventually embraced Hook as a cult favorite, Spielberg himself could never bring himself to revisit it. He delivered the final cut, did the promotional rounds, and quietly moved on. Decades later, he admitted he had not watched the film since its release. For him, every frame was a reminder not of magic or wonder, but of stress, delays, and fractured trust. Unlike E.T., which he could share with his grandchildren, or even Jaws, which carried its own legacy of regret, Hook was a wound he never wanted to reopen. For Roberts, the aftermath was equally complicated. The film had not derailed her career. She remained one of Hollywood's most bankable stars throughout the 1990s, headlining films like The Pelican Brief, My Best Friend's Wedding, and Notting Hill. Yet the shadow of Hook lingered. Every profile seemed to mention the rumors of her behavior on set, the nickname Tinkerhell, and Spielberg's public refusal to work with her again. In interviews, Roberts expressed sadness at how things had unfolded. She said she couldn't reconcile the man who had laughed with her during filming with the director who later distanced himself so firmly. For Spielberg, the regret wasn't just about Roberts. It was about himself. His inability to capture the story the way he wanted, his frustration at being consumed by production challenges, and his disappointment that a film so personal in theme felt so hollow in execution. Hook was supposed to be a reflection of his own struggles with growing up, a meditation on fatherhood and childhood wonder. Instead, it became the one movie in his career that he quietly disowned. A legacy divided. As the years passed, Steven Spielberg continued to direct some of the most celebrated films in cinema history: Jurassic Park in 1993, Schindler's List the same year, and countless others that solidified his reputation as Hollywood's greatest storyteller. Yet when conversations turned to Hook, his tone always shifted. In public, he admitted his disappointment, describing the film as a missed opportunity. Privately, he avoided revisiting it altogether. Unlike Jaws, which he regretted for its unintended impact on shark populations, Hook carried a different kind of weight. It wasn't about cultural fallout. It was about personal failure and painful memories. For Julia Roberts, the experience remained just as complicated. In the years after, she openly rejected the rumors that had haunted her. She denied ever being difficult for the sake of it, insisting the circumstances of the production, her isolation on green screen sets, the endless delays, the chaos in her personal life, would have tested anyone. Yet Spielberg's words on 60 Minutes, where he praised her talent but said he would never work with her again, cut deep. In a 1993 Vanity Fair interview, Roberts reflected on how she had thought of Spielberg as a friend. She remembered him laughing with her, joining in whipped cream fights, and telling her how much he enjoyed their set. To then see him hesitate publicly, she said, felt like betrayal. "Is this the same man I knew?" she asked. To her, it was a harsh lesson in how quickly alliances could shift in Hollywood. Time softened some of the film's reputation. By the 2000s, Hook had developed a loyal following, especially among viewers who had grown up with it. For many fans, the story of Peter Banning reclaiming his inner child resonated deeply. The performances of Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, and Maggie Smith were celebrated. Even Roberts' turn as Tinker Bell, once the subject of so much criticism, found appreciation from audiences revisiting the film without the noise of early 90s tabloid scandals. Directors like John M. Chu cited John Williams' haunting score as an inspiration for Wicked. The film endured, not as Spielberg intended, but as something beloved nonetheless. Still, for Spielberg, Hook remains untouchable. He rarely mentions it, and when he does, it is with regret rather than pride. For Roberts, it remains a scar from a time when her personal and professional lives collided in the worst way. And together, their feud stands as one of the most infamous in Hollywood, a story of two great talents whose paths crossed at exactly the wrong moment, leaving behind a film both cherished and cursed. What about you? Do you think Hook deserves the criticism Spielberg gave it, or do you see it as one of his hidden gems? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.